On today's episode of Cooking with Tovia, we're going to be making a socket to me cake. All the ingredients will be listed in the video's description field as well as the ticker that will pop up in the video. I'm using the 7-quart stand mixer by Kichot. So I have 2 cups of granulated sugar in the bottom of the bowl of my stand mixer. I'm using Dixie Crystals. So shout out to Dixie Crystals. Thank you so much for the sugar. I have been using this sugar since I was a little kid. It's really great. So I'm going to add 1 cup of butter. It's at room temperature. I use my thermometer to measure the temperature of the butter, and it was at about 66 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm using salted butter, but if you're not going to be using salted butter, you'll need to add a half a teaspoon of salt to your flour. So I'm omitting the salt because I'm using salted butter. We're going to cream the ingredients together at medium speed until everything gets light and fluffy and pale and all the sugars dissolve. Typically, I let this go for about 8 minutes, and I'll just scrape the bowl down halfway between mixing. So my sugar and butter has been creaming together for about 8 minutes, and I did scrape the bowl down a few times to make sure everything is being well combined. So I have 6 eggs that are here at room temperature. I took the temperature, they're at about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna add the eggs one at a time. I'm gonna do this on medium-low speed. I'm gonna add 1 egg and let it go for about 30 seconds or so, just until everything is combined. I'm going to start the machine, give it a scrape. It's always important that you scrape your machine, and also when you scrape your machine, get the bottom center of your bowl really good. So I'm going to continue this process until I have all my eggs added. So the eggs, I got all my eggs added to the butter and sugar. I got a nice, smooth, fluffy batter here so far. So I'm just scraping. I'm going to give it one more whip for a few seconds. So here in my bowl I have 3 cups of cake flour. And you can use all-purpose flour as well, but I'm using cake flour. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Also, if you're using unsalted butter, you'll need to add your salt, and it will be half a teaspoon of salt. Just mix those ingredients together. So we're going to alternately add our flour with the sour cream and vanilla. So I'm just gonna add about 1/3 of that flour to our stand mixer bowl. Mix until everything just disappears. You don't want to overmix this. As soon as you see it dissolve. So the flour is dissolved. I'm just going to give it a quick scrape. Now I'm going to add a tablespoon of vanilla extract. I'm using Bobba Grans. You can find out more about Bobba Grans in the description field in this video. Pure Mexican vanilla. It is absolutely amazing. You would truly get a real sense of what true vanilla tastes like without alcohol. I love it. It's very aromatic. You can just really smell the aroma. I love it. So I'm going to add a tablespoon of that. Also, I'm going to add some sour cream. I'm using a total of 8 ounces of sour cream. But I'm only gonna add half of that sour cream. And the sour cream is also at room temperature. And the sour cream is the most important part. This is the acid, which will make our cake nice and tender. So I added half of that. Just gonna mix until it dissolves. Once it dissolves, we're gonna add half of our cake flour, half of the remaining cake flour. And guys, could you please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up please, and share this video, leave a comment down below. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to check out my previous videos and subscribe. And when you subscribe, ring that little bell and select all notifications so you'll be notified of my uploads. So everything is dissolved and I'm adding half of my remaining flour. Mix until it dissolves. I might turn it on high for a second just to kind of knock all the flour off the sides of the bowl. Remaining sour cream. By doing this, by adding our wet and dry in this manner, it keeps your cake from sinking. Also keeps it from coming out hard as a rock. And also makes your cake very light. Okay, so now I'm going to just dump in the rest of the flour mixture. Mix until it's combined. I'm going to give it a scrape mix, and then we're going to remove it from the bowl. Remove the bowl from the machine. So I'm oven preheating at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have my 10-inch bundt pan that I've buttered and floured really well. So we're going to pour half of the batter into the bottom of our bundt. So I got half the batter in the bottom of my pan. I smoothed it out. Now this part, usually you would have 1.5 cups of chopped pecans, and you would add a few tablespoons of brown sugar along with a couple of teaspoons of cinnamon. I'm deadly allergic to tree nuts, so I'm just doing a substitute. So I'm doing 1/4 cup of brown sugar along with 2.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. So I'm just gonna spoon that across the top of the cake here, batter. See, I used more cinnamon sugar because I needed a little bit more since I'm not using any nuts. So now I'm going to pour the rest of our cake batter on top, and I'm going to smooth it out, and then this is going to bake for about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes in a 325 degree Fahrenheit oven that's been preheated, or until a cake tester or toothpick comes out clean when tested. Okay, so into the oven it goes, and if you're wondering what kind of pan I'm using a 10-inch springform bundt pan that I got from Walmart, made by Mainstays. I used it a couple times and I love it. None of the batter drips down into the sides of the pan or any of that. So we'll be back once this is done. So here is the cake. It did rise a wee bit higher than my pan, and then I realized that, of course, because the inside of my pan is a little bit smaller than my traditional bundt, so my bundt hole is larger. So if you're baking with a pan that's the bundt hole is a little bit wider, then just fill your pan to it's about halfway full in batter overall, and then you can take the remaining batter and bake that into either cupcakes or into a little small like 8x5-inch loaf. So I'm gonna let this cool for about 4 hours. So I'm gonna let this cool for about 15 minutes in the pan, and then I'm going to flip it upside down, invert it to a plate, and let it cool for about 30 more minutes, and then remove the pan from around it. So my cake is cooled completely. So I want to explain something to you guys. So my sugar sank to the bottom. I should have added a little bit of flour to it, but this is how mine came out because mines do not have any nuts in it. Okay, yours will remain in the middle if you're using nuts with it. So that's why it looks like that. So for the glaze, I'm using about 2.5 cups of Dixie Crystals powdered sugar, and to the powdered sugar, I'm going to add a couple of teaspoons of Bobba Gran's alcohol-free Mexican vanilla. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons, and then I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of milk. And then from that point, we will just adjust. But actually, I'm going to use a couple of teaspoons of milk, not a couple of tablespoons. We're going to mix. So it's not quite there. I'm just gonna add like a half a teaspoon more of milk. You really want to be careful. If you add too much milk too quickly, it will be so runny that you won't believe it. Now, if it gets too runny, just simply add more powdered sugar. So add about another half a teaspoon of milk. So we're almost there. So I'm gonna add about 1 teaspoon more. I should be about there. See, it's very pourable. It might be too thin. Let's see. It's a little too thin. So, being that's a little too thin, I'm just gonna add a couple tablespoons of powdered sugar. Now, there's so many different ways to make glaze. When I used to work in a bakery, we would just use hot water and powdered sugar and nothing more. Makes me a little bit thicker. So after you pour this on your cake, it will firm up. It will get sort of hard over time. Okay, so it's pretty thick. So I have a rack that I've lined. Well, I have my cake sitting on top of a rack above a pan. And just to catch all the excess. And I'm just gonna pour big globs. So I'm just gonna let this sit for about 30 minutes or so. Just to allow the glaze to set up. So here is the cake. I'm gonna go ahead and cut into it. I should have used a super sharp knife, but let's use a better knife. I'm gonna cut a really large size so that way you can really be able to see the inside of the cake. Beautiful, moist texture. Look at the crumb of the cake. It's perfect. So here's the cake. Look at the crumb. It's perfect. Please share this video. Leave a comment. Hit the thumbs up. So I'm going to go ahead and Give this cake a taste. The cake, I could just smell it. It smells unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Very moist. Beautiful buttery flavor. Taste all that cinnamon, sugar in the middle, delicious. The glaze on the outside, delicious, and definitely the Mexican vanilla is what really made this cake. But give you a close up of the crumb. I hope you guys can really see that. Perfect, nice tight crumb. And remember, make sure your ingredients are not too hot and not too cold. And if you just go by those temperatures I gave you, you want to keep it between 62 and about 69 degrees, all your ingredients, when making them, and you should be perfect. Please add this video to your playlist, and don't forget to live and be well. And thank you so much for watching.